Many pastors online seem to think we should feel guilty for celebrating Trump's victory, but there are many reasons for Christians to unapologetically rejoice, and we are going to list some of those very big reasons on today's episode of Relatable. Before we get into it, I do want to remind you that we have some new merchandise that is so perfect for this moment, but really any moment, because it is always true. We've got these mugs and this yard sign that says God's eternal plan of redemption is always going off without a hitch. That is a phrase that we use so often on this podcast to remind ourselves that this is our Father's world. In the midst of the chaos and the confusion, He is a refuge of clarity and comfort and courage, and He is always in charge. So you can go to alliemerch.com and you can get your mug, your yard sign. Okay, today's episode of Relatable, it's brought to you by our friends at Good Ranchers. Go to goodranchers.com, use code Allie at checkout. That's goodranchers.com, code Allie. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Monday. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week so far, that you had a wonderful weekend. Again, this looks and sounds different than normal because I am recording remotely today, but I love that y'all really never seem to care about that. It always bothers me when the audio and visuals don't look like they typically do, but y'all just don't seem to care about that at all, and I really appreciate it. Okay, today is Veterans Day, so I just wanted to take a second to thank our veterans. I am just so grateful for the sacrifices that are being made, that have been made, so that I can have a podcast that says a lot of things that contradict the prevailing ideology, which is still in most of our institutions and currently in this current administration, progressivism. This is not something that I take for granted. I saw someone wearing a shirt in the airport yesterday and it had a big cross on it, and it said, "This shirt is illegal in many nations." And that is true. The history of the church has not been one of comfort and ease, of being in the majority, of having the freedom to affect culture and politics. But that is who the church has gotten to be in the United States, thanks to the sacrifice of those who have fought on our behalf. And I'm just so grateful for that. So just a little history about about Veterans Day, rather, in case you don't know how it got started. So it was originally called Armistice Day, the national holiday that commemorated the end of World War I on November 11th, 1918. So this was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. It received its name in America in 1926, and the hope was that World War I was the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, that was not the case. We have had hundreds of thousands of soldiers die since World War I, and we are just now getting to the point where that greatest generation who fought in World War II are there aren't many of them left. There really are just a few of them. They're in their 90s and early 100s, and of course most of them have already passed, and we've gotten to hear their stories. If you have not watched Band of Brothers, I encourage you to do that. Thanksgiving, Christmas, my husband and I have watched Band of Brothers multiple times. It will just bring you to tears. America really is such a special nation because of the grace of God, but also because of the grit of its people, especially those who have put their lives on the line on our behalf. In 1954, a bill was proposed to change Armistice Day to Veterans Day. The bill was passed and signed into law by President Eisenhower, who was also, of course, a five-star general and served in both world wars. And this is what he said in his Veterans Day proclamation in 1954. "Now, therefore, I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, President of the United States of America, do hereby call upon all of our citizens to observe Thursday, November 11th, 1954, as Veterans Day. On that day, let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all of those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on foreign shores to preserve our heritage of freedom. And let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting and enduring peace, so that their efforts shall not have been in vain." And speaking of veterans, I also wanted to talk about Sam Brown. Sam Brown was a Senate candidate in Nevada. He was unfortunately defeated by Democrat incumbent Jackie Rosen, but he is a veteran whose story is really just incredible, and he represents the best of us. He represents the best of those who have laid themselves on the line for our freedom. So I just want to I just want to talk about this a little bit. First of all, he ran an incredible race. It wasn't expected to be a nail biter, but it was. But he has held no prior political office, and so a lot of people didn't really expect his political career to get off the ground, for him to be as successful as he was, for this race to be as close as it was, and yet again, because he really did just have an incredible campaign, and because people really admired his courage so much, he got really close. So he was a graduate of West Point who deployed to Afghanistan in 2008. While serving there, his vehicle was hit with a roadside bomb. He was severely burned, causing permanent scars across his face and body. Though he was medically discharged from the Army, he went on to develop a career in business, served the veteran community by starting a business that helped them get the medication they needed in a timely manner. So here he is sharing part of his story at SUT 1.
We hit a roadside bomb and it blew up my Humvee, and it left 3 of my other guys and myself wounded, and it killed one of my soldiers. I remember as the bomb went off, I'm soaked in diesel fuel, and I was burning essentially from my knees up. The only thing I can hear at this point now is my own voice, and I'm screaming. I tried to stop, drop, and roll, trying to get the flames out, but I couldn't, and I was just continued to burn. At that moment, Sam Brown died, but I heard the voice of one of my soldiers immediately after say, "Sir, I've got you." And that was the rebirth.
Well, praise God for that story of redemption, and praise God for sparing his life. Gosh, I don't think we can even begin to understand what our soldiers have endured on our behalf. My goodness. So, Captain Sam Brown and his wife, Amy, they are incredible Christians, really strong in the Lord. And after AP announced his defeat against Jackie Rosen, he posted this on X. He said, "Thank you, Nevada. Serving as your nominee has been the honor of a lifetime, and though the outcome is not what we hoped, I am deeply moved by the trust, dedication, and hope you've shown throughout this journey. Together, we set a new standard for what it means to stand for Nevada, united in a vision of strength, truth, resilience, and unwavering belief in a brighter future." So there's Captain Sam Brown, his wife, his 3 cute kids, and hopefully we're all kind of hoping, because he was just such a strong candidate, the kind of person that you really want representing us and representing our party. A lot of people are saying, okay, well, he should still be a part of this movement. He should be a part of the Trump administration. Ben Shapiro offered this on X. He said, "Captain Sam Brown was a terrific candidate, and his star is only beginning to rise. He'd make an unbelievably great Secretary of Veterans Affairs as a start." Sam Brown said, "Thank you, Ben Shapiro, for the suggestion and for your support. Serving this nation has always been my calling, and though the campaign came up short, my dedication to America remains strong. So where should that service take me next? I'd love to hear your thoughts below." So I think that is a great suggestion from Ben Shapiro. I would love to see him in some kind of leadership role, and just God bless him and his family. Be praying for them as they navigate this transitional time. When you put so much work and energy and effort, you put your family through so much to try to win a campaign, and you almost get there, and then unfortunately it falls short. It can be really hard, but what we do know is that man's rejection is God's protection, and he is always working all things together for the good of those who love him, for our good and his glory. All right, speaking of the election, let's do one final election update, as the electoral and popular vote counts have finally concluded. But first, let me stop and tell you about my first sponsor for the day. We've got Range Leather. I love Range Leather. If you are looking for a Christmas gift for the related gal or related bro in your life, or really anyone in your life, you've got to check out rangeleather.com/Allie. They make premium leather goods that last a lifetime. All of their products are made in Laramie, Wyoming. Kyle and Bailey are awesome people. This is a family-owned company. They've been listening to Relatable for a long time. They're amazing Christian people, and they started Range Leather just because they wanted to bring quality leather goods to you guys, to make them as accessible as possible. They all have a forever guarantee. Handmade leather goods always make great gifts, including their wallets, their bags, their jewelry, their leather patch hats. They've got all kinds of amazing stuff. I love my bag and all of my items from Range Leather. Go to rangeleather.com/Allie. Get 15% off. rangeleather.com/Allie. Okay, so the Associated Press officially called Nevada and Arizona for Trump, giving Trump a total of 312 electoral votes to Harris's 226. And okay, I am second guessing myself, by the way, in how I'm pronouncing Nevada, because I feel like I used to say Nevada and you guys told me who live there that it is actually Nevada, but now I'm second guessing myself. And I'm wondering if I have gotten it wrong, if I've switched it. So I am very sorry if I am offending those of you who have told me that I was pronouncing it wrong my whole life. And now I'm trying to fix it and I might have just messed it up. But okay, maybe I don't have to say it again for the rest of the episode. So 312 to 226 is a complete spanking. I mean, that is just a wipeout. Trump also won the popular vote, 74.8 million votes against Harris's 71.2 million. The last time that a Republican won the popular vote was, I believe, it was George W. Bush. Bree, if you could message me. I almost said George H.W. Bush, but I'm pretty sure that George W. Bush won the popular vote as well. But it is not very typical for the Republican to win the popular vote. Of course, Trump lost the popular vote against Hillary Clinton. And of course, he also lost the popular vote against Biden, as well as the electoral vote. And so this was just a total and complete annihilation of the progressive agenda. Yes, it was 2004, George W. Bush. That's the last time we won the popular vote. And before that, it was 1988, George H.W. Bush. This is according to the NBC News exit polling. Trump picked up a larger proportion of voters under 30 than any Republican presidential candidate since 2008 and made significant gains among young women compared to 2020. Women under 30 shifted 10 points toward Trump. Among young women, Biden's 35-point lead over Trump in 2020 shrunk to a 24-point lead for Harris. Gosh, there are so many reasons for that. I would go back and watch or listen to my episode the day after the election, and we kind of analyzed all of this. And I think what caused this shift, I first saw this tweet from Charlie Kirk when he was talking about the young female vote. Of course, when it comes to young voters, we have Turning Point and Charlie Kirk to thank a lot. When it comes to young women, I think a lot of us on the conservative side were doing everything we could. Back in 2020, I think COVID and especially BLM among evangelicals really blinded a lot of people. They really felt like, okay, I'm going to vote for this independent, middle of the road, empathetic commander-in-chief Joe Biden against mean old racist Donald Trump. But since then, the blinders have really come off. They see the dark underbelly of the BLM social justice movement, and they saw the tyranny that COVID policies enacted in a lot of cases. And 2020, as I said last week, 2020 hurt Trump in 2020, but helped Trump in 2024 as people have really politically realigned. And of course, relatable, we did absolutely everything we could to reach our demographic. And I continue to get so many messages from y'all talking about how you were able to use points that we've discussed on the show or points that I wrote about in Toxic Empathy to convince your friends to vote for Trump, or just to help your friends understand why you voted for Trump, to defend your Christian worldview, your conservative politics. And I'm just so thankful for that. I've been very surprised, though, over the past week or so, how many messages I'm continuing to get from people saying, hey, can you help me respond to this liberal family member? Can you help me formulate this argument to this post? What do I say to my friend who said this? How do I justify my vote? Y'all, please go back and listen to the previous episodes that we did for months and months leading up to the election. And you can read my book. I neither have the capacity nor the desire to go into all of the different responses to things that we spent so many hours responding to before the election. For example, I'm still getting a ton of questions about how do I respond to this story of the women out of Texas who were seemingly unable to get miscarriage care. Is miscarriage the same thing as abortion? Do I respond to this? We spent so much time breaking down those stories, giving you responses to those stories. And I don't blame you at all for asking me. I understand a lot of people listening or watching on or following on Instagram just haven't been following for a long time. But if you're ever wondering if I've talked about something, you can always type in the subject that you're looking for and relatable, either on YouTube or wherever you listen, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and usually it will come up. You can even just type in like relatable Kamala, and all of our episodes about Kamala and the election will come up. So that's just a really easy way to do it. And I have tried my very best to equip you guys with the tools. And I just love seeing screenshots of the conversations that you've had with your friends or family on the other side of the aisle, where you have been able to employ facts and arguments in a way that is effective. You guys are just awesome. And that's what I want to do. And messages like that just really encourage me. According to the Associated Press, there is still one Senate seat left to be called in Arizona, with Democrat Ruben Gallego leading over Kari Lake by 3 points. Republicans currently hold the Senate with 53 seats, having flipped 4 seats in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Montana. 18 seats have yet to be called for the House in Alaska and several other states. Republicans are projected to win the House and are currently leading with 214 seats, having flipped 3 seats in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Okay, that's amazing. So House, Senate, and the presidency, when you hear people saying that is a mandate, what they mean by that is that the American people are saying, okay, we want to change. We want new leadership. We want you to represent us and our interests. And so go get things done. Don't just sit there and stop Democrats from doing what they could do. Actually get things done. Actually secure the border. Actually help our economic needs. Actually get boys out of women's sports. That's the kind of action, immediate action people are looking for. Actually drain the swamp, as it were. Cut bureaucracy, get corrupt bureaucrats out of the government, restore the strength and the integrity of our military, stop our unnecessary foreign involvement in some places. I'm not an isolationist, but I think we can all agree that it's time to reevaluate where America is entangled and where our tax dollars are actually going, especially when it seems like our tax dollars are not going toward protecting our own borders. So when people say that this is a mandate, that we have the Republican trifecta, that is what they're talking about. Now, I just want to take a brief moment to say something I've been thinking about. I spoke to a group of young women, Claire Booth Luce Policy Institute, at their event over the weekend, and I was talking to these young women about this, like, what is our role? There's been a huge political realignment over the past few years that we've seen that I think is really glorious. We have center-left people who are part of the Republican Party that were not previously. I mean, we have Joe Rogan, who voted for Bernie Sanders a few years ago, who just endorsed Donald Trump. We've got Elon Musk. We've got people like Theo Vaughn, that kind of comedian class, the socially liberal, but not into the boys and girls sports, politically incorrect, that crowd. We've got the Make America Healthy Again people. We've got RFK Jr., we've got Nicole Shanahan, and then we've got people like Tulsi Gabbard, a lifelong Democrat. We've got people like Megyn Kelly, who obviously had a contentious relationship with Trump previously. She saw the state of the country and the policy agenda of the other side and just said, you know what, past grievances really don't matter when the fate of our country is hanging in the balance. And so we have a lot of people who are center left who are not where you and I are. I mean, a Republican Party that both holds the enthusiasm of someone like Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner and Allie Stuckey is quite the big tent. And so what do we do as Christian conservatives to ensure that the Republican Party doesn't go the way of the Conservative Party in Europe, the conservative, or, in the UK and different countries in Europe, or the Conservative Party in Canada? And everyone has their role to play. I am not someone who is unwilling to build coalitions or link arms with people that I agree with on some issues, but disagree with on other big issues. I would say that most people within the Republican Party and in the conservative movement are less conservative than me because they are not, many of them are not Christians, or they are not the same kind of Christian that you and I are, and we have disagreements about how our biblical worldview should apply to politics. I am as conservative as it gets in every regard, certainly when it comes to things like abortion and reproductive technology and marriage. I think the Christian has to be, because these are creation order issues. These are pre-civilizational issues, which means that they do absolutely have a place in our law, because when we forego Genesis 1 or Genesis 1 through 3, that creates an existential crisis. If society is based on the reality of male and female, if our freedoms are based on this idea of us being created by a creator who gave us unalienable rights, if family and the creation of children is the building block of society, then I say that it's really important for a free country to get those things right. So anything that is a created order issue, I am going to hold really firm on. And interestingly, these are the very things that I would say Trump and his camp disagree with us on, those who are closest to him. They are, I would say, very socially liberal when it comes to the definition of marriage. I think they would probably even call Caitlyn Jenner she, and maybe even say that he is a woman. They draw the line on certain things, and I appreciate that. We're about to get into that. Men and women's sports, men and women's bathrooms, so-called sex change surgeries for children, but they are not where we are when it comes to abortion, the dignity of life inside the womb, the reality and need for natural marriage. And so what is our role? I see my role, and also your role as people who align with me on these things, as the anchor. We are the anchor over to the right. And our job is to use the power of persuasion to bring people over to us. And I already see this happening because I got a message from someone who has not typically been associated with conservatism, and really just kind of sees the corruption in the government and wants to do something about that, the need for America to become healthy, who let me know that she has started to see the light and change her mind on things like abortion and faith from listening to this podcast. And so I'm hoping that that is true for a lot of people who are in that center left, even center right crowd, who are just now coming over to our side because of one or two issues or because they like RFK. I think that we can move them over to us, but we have to stay rooted and grounded in what we know is true. And that is going to mean that we disagree with and criticize some things that Trump does. For example, when he says that he is going to force taxpayers to fund IVF, even though the IVF industry is responsible for more destruction of embryonic life every year than abortion is, that means we have to raise a respectful ruckus about that. That doesn't mean that we're not happy that he won. That doesn't mean that we're not counting our victories and thanking God for the mercy of our nation that he won the presidency. But that means that we are putting what is good, right, and true first, that we are remembering that God's ways are better and that we are truly being salt and light, whether it is in the country in general or in the Republican Party specifically. Like, that is one thing that you can trust me on, that when Republican policy and biblical truth conflict, that I want to always, by the grace of God, stand on the side of biblical truth and do everything that I can to pull everyone on our side to that direction. And I want you to be able to do that too. So that's what this victory lap looks like for us. We've got a lot of work to do when it comes to these creation issues. And we're going to keep talking about that, even if it makes some people, even on our own political side, angry. We are going to stand up for children who are always the unconsenting subjects of progressive social experiments. And it doesn't matter if someone has an R by their name and are pushing for things that are harmful to those children. We are going to say something about it. But of course, Trump's policy prescriptions are far better in general for our country and specifically for children than Harris's would have been, who of course believed in pushing and promoting the same things that Biden's Health and Human Services Department did, which was the mutilation of gender deceived kids. And Donald Trump has spoken out against that, and he is going to put an end to that when he becomes president. And I'm very grateful for that. Let me pause and tell you about our next sponsor for the day. It's Crowd Health. So Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's your escape route from the craziness of the health insurance world, which can just put so many burdens on you at a time when you really need help most. For $175 for an individual or $575 for a family of 4 or more, you get access to a community of people who are willing to help out in the event of an emergency. You get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescriptions, so much more without doctors' networks getting in the way. And of course, you join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. Go to joincrowdhealth.com/Allie to get just $99 a month for your first 3 months. Crowd Health is not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com/Allie. All right, so here is Trump. This is actually from February of last year, but people are replaying it and responding to it now, talking about his plans to revoke Biden's gender policies and to ask Congress to pass a bill establishing the acknowledgement of the reality of just 2 genders, male and female. SOP 3.
On day 1, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end.
Absolutely. And I'm just so grateful for that. I'm grateful for that clarity. As we've said many times, clarity is kindness. And, you know, some people say, oh, we shouldn't even say gender. We should only say sex. I've always disagreed with that. Sex and gender are interchangeable. Gender in itself is not some woke progressive concept. I mean, gender and sex are the same. It is this idea that gender and sex are distinct that is harmful, that someone can be one gender even if their biology says differently. I really encourage you, if you have not already, to read Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey. Read love thy body, get you toxic empathy, and you will be good to go. You will be so equipped to answer these culture war questions, especially when it comes to the human body and sexuality and identity and gender. He is absolutely right to call it this insanity. And just as a reminder, this is what Biden did when it comes to this. I mean, we are talking about double mastectomies in minors. We are talking about chemical castration via puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in minors. We have talked to some of these people who started their transition as a minor. Don't tell me that's not happening. It is 100% happening. We talked to Vanessa, who is a whistleblower from Texas Children's in Houston, who demonstrated that these doctors were illegally, because this is illegal in Texas, prescribing cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers to children and using manipulation tactics on parents, saying if you don't let your child change, quote unquote, genders, your child will commit suicide. I mean, this is actually happening. This is happening across the country. And the Biden administration, this is possibly the most evil, if not one of the most evil things that the Biden administration did, and Harris would have pushed even harder. So on his first day of office, Biden signed a radical executive order mandating the so-called transgender agenda. Children should be able to learn without worrying about whether they will be denied access to the restroom, the locker room, or school sports. Well, if you are the opposite gender of the bathroom that you're trying to enter, that is the disruption to learning. That's a disruption to learning for the girls. So this is a perfect example of toxic empathy. They only want you to feel empathy for, they say, 12-year-old boy who thinks that he's a girl, and the potential disruption to his learning that might be caused by making him go to the bathroom of his actual sex, and not the disruption of learning or the discomfort or the sadness or the straight up trauma of the girls who are forced to share a bathroom with and change in front of a fully intact male who is often still attracted to women. That's why it's called toxic empathy, because it is a kind of empathy that blinds you to reality and morality. So you can no longer judge rightly. You're not thinking about the victims on the other side of the moral equation. You are completely blinded to the only person that progressive activists and politicians want you to consider. Also early in his administration, Biden issued a memorandum on advancing the human rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons around the world. Just a reminder that intersex, one, it's a misnomer. There's no one that is actually like two sexes. You might have some kind of sex disorder, and that actually happens, but that is actually something that you are born with, that happens in the womb. That is not, that's not the same thing as a man declaring that he is the opposite sex. So he said that he was going to advance these rights, but it directed all U.S. government entities to engage these issues abroad. Biden also issued a new policy regarding so-called transgenderism in the military that not only allowed for these individuals to serve in the U.S. military, but to have their gender transition, so cutting off your genitalia, paid for by American taxpayers. On April 19th, 2024, the Biden-Harris administration announced it would redefine sex in Title IX to include gender identity. So it would require schools to ignore the biological distinction between male and female in favor of an individual's sense of their gender. So again, that means that any boy, no matter even what they look like or anything like that, could all of a sudden tell their school, if that school receives Title IX funding, that, hey, I feel like a girl, and so I want to change with the women's lacrosse team, and I want to play on the women's lacrosse team. And he could go in there and he could drop his pants, and none of the girls would have any say over that whatsoever. None of the girls on the opposing team would have any say on whether or not they want to compete against a man. And yes, this is actually happening. Remember Peyton McNabb that we had on this show, that she was forced to play volleyball against a male on the opposite team, and he hit the ball so hard into her head that she had a brain bleed and now has permanent neck damage. This young woman, she was only 17 years old. Now, thankfully, a lot of women's sports, high school and college, are boycotting the games where there is a boy on the opposite team. You can call that transphobia. I just call it discernment, and I call it courage. And we should be standing with those women. But again, the Biden-Harris administration, motivated by wickedness, by at best toxic empathy, at worst Satanism, and really those things go hand in hand, we're ignoring the pain and the potential victims on the other side of this equation in favor of males who want to victimize women. Think about the kind of man that wants to play some kind of sport against a woman. That is a kind of man that is abusive. That is a kind of man that wants to humiliate and belittle and cause pain to women. That is the last kind of man you actually want on the same court or field or in the same locker room or bathroom as a girl. My goodness. And so when the media kept talking about progressive activists, the Harris campaign kept on saying, vote for your daughters, vote for your daughters. They were talking about ensuring that your daughter could kill your granddaughter. When we were talking about women's rights, we were talking about ensuring that our girls weren't assaulted in the locker room by a man or murdered by an illegal alien as they were running on a Sunday morning like Laken Riley was. And so we were both talking about women's rights. They were talking about the right to kill. We were talking about the right to live and compete freely. There was a debate about this on CNN over the weekend, and it was on Newsnight with Abby Phillips. And it was a debate on a round table. Shermichael Singleton, he said, look, people didn't like this transgender stuff, while writer Jay Michelson really did not like what Shermichael Singleton had to say about this. Here's SOP 4.
And I think there are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen to that.
Let's reset for a second because, look, this is a really heated issue.
Okay, so the debate continued back and forth like that with this guy calling them transphobic. Don't call trans girls boys. Okay, here's my question for you, Jay. What's a trans girl? Why do you have to put the word trans in front of it? What does trans mean? What's the difference between a trans girl and a girl? Why can't you just say girl? Let's go. Let's define your terms. I mean, this is the whole premise of Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman? They wouldn't define it because if you define woman, then trans woman doesn't make any sense. And in my book, Toxic Empathy, we go through the 5 biggest mottos that you hear in support of the pillars of progressivism, that abortion is healthcare, trans women are women, love is love, no human is illegal, social justice is justice. This is how they use propaganda. It's circular. They never define their terms, and that is to shut your brain off from thinking. So you just repeat the thing that sounds good without actually ever thoughtfully wondering, okay, but how do we define that? How do we define our terms? And that is why in every debate, you have to ask someone to define their terms and ask them where they get that definition. I saw some people online saying, oh, well, Shermichael should have said biological girls or boys. No, he shouldn't have. Because if you say biological males or biological females, you are assenting to this wrong notion that there's such thing as a non-biological male or female. There's no such thing as a non-biological male or female, so it's just redundant. So no, I think it is absolutely right for him to just say boys, because in most Americans, that cements the absurdity of the situation in their mind, because for all of our lives, it has been, duh, boys should not play in girls' sports. There's a reason why we have sex-exclusive spaces. It's not for the boys, it's for the girls. That's why we have Title IX. It was to protect women. It was to protect female athletes. And without that, there are no more female sports. So for this reason alone, I'm just so thankful. I'm just so thankful that Trump won. What a great mercy on our nation. And there is also another wonderful reason that Trump won, and that is to root out the corruption and the wickedness, hopefully, that exists in many of our institutions and bureaucracies. And that includes in FEMA. Definitely the organization, the entity that you do not want to be biased in any way. And so we'll get into this bombshell story in just a second. Let me tell you about our third sponsor for the day. Okay, even though we are excited about the Trump presidency, we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple months. We just want to be prepared for anything. And that means having an emergency stash of medical supplies. So life-saving antibiotics that comes in a Jace case from Jace Medical, also a Jace Daily case. That's a year-long supply of the prescriptions that you and your family rely on. It is so much better to be safe than sorry. In your Jace case, you can even add on things like Tamiflu, ivermectin, and EpiPen, just complete lifesavers. And you get a peace of mind knowing that you're taken care of in that way. Go to jace.com, use code Allie for a discount on your order. They have just launched an all-new compounded version of ivermectin for only $30 as an add-on to the Jace case. That's a great deal. Go to jace.com, code Allie. So FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, was deployed to help the victims of the hurricane in North Carolina. And it was discovered by reporting by the Daily Wire that a FEMA supervisor, Marnie Washington, actually instructed her crew to avoid helping homes that had a Trump sign out front. So here's the summary of what happened, and then we'll get into the details. So this FEMA supervisor, Marnie Washington, has been fired after she ordered workers to avoid homes advertising Trump, as workers identified residents who could qualify for federal aid in Florida in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. I'm sorry, I said North Carolina. It's actually in Florida. This is according to internal correspondence obtained by the Daily Wire and confirmed by multiple federal employees. The guidance came as the Biden administration was criticized over its sluggish response to Hurricane Helene in rural areas across the country. So this is a screenshot of the chat. It says this. Washington said that it would be the best practice to, quote, avoid homes advertising Trump. No explanation was given for this guidance. This was just seen as best practice. This was among other recommendations like practice de-escalation, avoid high salt diets, and coffee. The government employees told the Daily Wire that at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags were skipped from the end of October and into November due to this guidance, meaning they were not given the opportunity to qualify for FEMA assistance. How evil is this? And I'm sorry, this would not happen on the other side. It just wouldn't. I've never seen something like this where Harris signs, houses with Harris signs, are told to be skipped over for assistance or any kind of government help because of their political affiliation. I'm sorry, the conservative side simply isn't in general like this. We really care about our country. Images shared with the Daily Wire show that houses were skipped over by the workers who wrote in the government system messages such as Trump sign, no entry per leadership, no stop Trump flag, Trump sign, these are all quotes, and Trump sign, no contact per leadership. Several DHS employees who shared the communication with the Daily Wire said it felt wrong to discriminate against Trump supporters when they were at their most vulnerable. Quote, I volunteered to help disaster victims, not discriminate against them, the employees said. It didn't matter if they were black, white, Hispanic, for Trump, for Harris, everyone deserves the same amount of help. One team member wrote in a complaint filed to DHS about the guidance. Quote, if they had damage or lost power for over 36 hours, it was my duty to inform them of the benefits to which they are entitled through FEMA. So think about it. You've got an elderly couple that has been languishing in their home. They don't have power, meaning they don't have air conditioning. They don't have a refrigerator. They don't have a way to plug in their CPAP machine. Who knows? They were left stranded by FEMA, not informed of the benefits and the help that they could get from the government because of whom they were voting for. That is not just un-American. That is evil. That is so incredibly evil. The New York Times published a fact check a couple weeks ago detailing Trump's, quote, false claims about the federal response to Hurricane Helene in early October, because Trump had posted on Truth Social that I don't like the reports I'm getting about the federal government and the Democrat government and the Democrat governor of the state going out of their way to not help people in Republican areas. The New York Times had said, oh, well, that lacks evidence. We don't know. We don't know if that's true. The New York Times has not updated this article. But now the New York Times has published a new article. FEMA fires employee for telling Milton relief workers to skip houses with Trump signs. The agency said it was investigating the incident in the aftermath of the Category 3 hurricane that hit Florida. The House of Representatives Oversight Committee said it has since launched an investigation to look further into the reports and ensure FEMA is sticking to its mission to help Americans of all political persuasions. Really, really disgusting stuff. FEMA actually blamed Republican misinformation for people not getting the help that they needed. Here's Top 5.
It's frankly disappointing that we're having to deal with this narrative. And the fact that there's a few leaders that are having a hard time telling the difference between fact and fiction is creating an impedance to our ability to actually get people the help they need.
Yeah, we had the governor of Tennessee talk about the fact that some of this may be driven by foreign powers, lies from foreign governments to sow confusion. Republicans, unfortunately, I just said presidential candidates are picking that up, and others are picking that up as well.
So that was on October 7th. That is the head of FEMA, the FEMA administrators saying, oh, this is because of Republican misinformation. Of course, that was before this report came out, and it actually looks like, in fact, it was just malicious bias. It is interesting how the media is reporting on this. So CBS is reporting this on Twitter, said a FEMA worker has been fired after she directed workers helping hurricane survivors not to go to homes with Trump signs. And they used a picture of this administrator, but the administrator that you just saw on Morning Joe is not who did this. And it's actually this woman with this picture that the New York Post posted on X. FEMA official who allegedly told workers to avoid Florida homes with Trump signs fired. And here's the picture of what she looks like. I mean, she happens to be a Black woman. So it does seem, and this is what the media does a lot, if the suspect or if the villain in a particular story is not white, they will still use a stock photo or a picture of a white person that doesn't have anything to do with the story because they think that they are protecting some kind of racist narrative, but really you're just not telling the truth. And so, yeah, I would say that I'm thankful that the people who believe that that is the right thing to do don't have more power through the Harris administration, because that would have just gotten so much worse. Again, just praise God for his mercy. And because of all of this and so much more, we are celebrating. We are celebrating that Trump won, and we should not apologize about that. That is not gloating. That is not bragging. That is praising God that the policies that are going to lessen evil have prevailed, that they will be implemented and not the evil policies of Kamala Harris. That is a reason for us to cheer. And we shouldn't feel bad about that, no matter what some wet blankets in the church are saying. So I'm going to respond to some of those posts that you guys have been seeing and sending me in just a second. Let me pause and tell you about our last sponsor for the day first. The people at Birch Gold join us in celebrating Trump's victory. And now is a great time to diversify your savings. So many things are out of our control, but our savings are in our control. They will help you at Birch Gold Group convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. The best news, it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. All you have to do is text Allie to 989898, get your free info kit. Plus, right now through Black Friday, you'll receive a free 1 ounce Silver Eagle for every $5,000 purchased. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text Allie to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Do not temper your celebration because it might hurt someone's feelings. Of course, we shouldn't be mean to the other side. Of course, you shouldn't alienate your brother or sister in Christ. Of course, you shouldn't get in their face and say, hey, you're such a loser. I mean, I just don't really see that happening, but of course that's wrong because that is not kind and that could push them further away from the church and from the truth of the gospel. And of course, we don't want that. But you could be happy, Christian. You can celebrate completely unapologetically that the person who represents the more orderly and peaceful and more righteous policies has won, and that the candidate who represented policies of destruction and evil and chaos lost. We don't have to say that both candidates were equal and one side lost and one side won, and we really just shouldn't express any feelings about this. This is not football. I mean, this is bigger than that. These policies have serious implications in people's lives, and we are looking at the difference between allowing states to have laws that protect the dignity of unborn children and a person that would have done everything that she possibly could within her power to stop states from being able to implement those laws. She would have done everything that she could to ensure that America was a sanctuary country for abortion through all 9 months. She would have done everything she could to force our tax dollars to pay for that and to pay for the so-called transition surgeries of young people. And of course, she would have continued her open border policies that she carried through Biden's presidency. And so I am absolutely celebrating that side lost. That doesn't mean that I hate the people who voted for her. No, but I am not going to pretend like I'm not happy about that. And I think it is right and good for the Christian to rejoice in that. Justin Giboney, he's a political strategist. He's the president of the AND campaign, which I think exists to try to persuade conservative Christians to vote Democrat. I don't think that's the description that he would give, and I don't disagree with everything that he says, but it's a lot of nuance to the point of not really making any clear case for anything. And so I think their arguments lack a lot of clarity and actually cause a lot of confusion. But here's what he says. Christians, whether your candidate wins or loses, there will still be hurting people who need you to give them hope and be a sober, thoughtful advocate for them. Don't let the outcome defeat you or compel you to pretend that the battle is won. Avoid bitterness and triumphalism. So again, I agree with some of that for sure, that we shouldn't forget that our ultimate goal is to be a witness and to share the gospel with people. We should avoid bitterness. I don't know that I agree that we should avoid feeling triumphant. Yes, of course, this does not mean that the spiritual battle is won and that evil has been defeated forever. But again, I think that a lot of these messages are conveying guilt, are trying to get you to feel guilty for being happy and rejoicing, and I'm just not buying that. Former musician and member of the Christian band Caedmon's Call, Derek Webb, here's a picture of Derek Webb. He said, to my evangelical friends who are loudly attempting to justify their votes and behaviors at the moment, despite the negotiations you've clearly done with your morality and savior, I would invite you to consider that you cannot build the kingdom using the devil's tools. Okay, but you are literally a man wearing a dress right now in this picture. So I'm not really interested in what compromises you think that I am making. Several other posts like that. John Piper also said, he said, having delivered us from one evil, God now tests us with another. The Lord your God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul. Again, I just don't think these cryptic messages are all that helpful. And he wrote an article back in 2020, which he recently reposted, arguing that yes, abortion is evil, but Trump's personality is equally as evil and is also a curse to our nation. Pastor John, they are not the same things. Both things can be sinful without them being the same, right? And that's basically the argument that he's making, that they're both equal curses, but they're not. These are the options that we were presented. And yes, one guy we definitely want to be closer to the Lord, and we want him to be where we are on all of these policies. But the other person's policies who affect our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors, the most vulnerable among us, were far more wicked and disorderly. We're far worse. We can say that. I think some Christians think that moral relativism is courage, and it's not. It's actually a form of confusion and cowardice. And certainly I don't think that John Piper is a coward, but I do think that his interpretation of the election in this current political moment is lacking wisdom. I do. And he's someone that I greatly respect and have learned so much from theologically. But this is, while both sides are bad, and that's it. That's not helpful to people. Sure, both sides are imperfect. Neither party is salvific, but which policies are better? Which policies better promote justice and goodness and freedom and order? Which party best protects parental rights and the rights of children to intact bodies? Which party best protects our borders and our sovereignty as a nation? Which party will best punish evil and reward good? I think that's pretty obvious. And it doesn't have to be quite as complicated as a lot of people make it out to be. If you haven't listened to my conversation with Johnny Artavanis, I really encourage you to do so. All right, that's all I have time for today. I'm still celebrating. I am still happy. But like I said, we've got work to do as the Christians in this movement. We've got to be anchors over here in what is good and right and true. And through the power of persuasion, move as many people over to our side as possible. But that is a heck of a lot easier with Trump in office and Kamala Harris in office. So praise God for that. All right, we will be back here tomorrow.